joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'ma be an auto hoax, and it feels so good. Yeah, yeah. You just ought to believe everything like I knew that you would. Like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time. Ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes.
And it looks to me like reconnection is successful. So this is June 22nd, 2025. This is the IPS Deprogram. Let's just go ahead and proceed as though there aren't consistent interruptions. So basically, the title will say it all. IPS Deprogram, Nuclear God Construct. Yes, I would contend that the nuke is a God construct. And belief in it is tantamount to having a superstition. I think the technical term would be a hyperstition. The difference being a hyperstition is something that's reinforced by the system, whereas a superstition is labeled as something that doesn't exist categorically. But the hyperstitions are essentially the same thing, but nobody knows. So, for example, we're talking about the weapons of mass destruction scenario. Does it matter if they're real? Well, not really. For the purposes of Psywar, it doesn't matter if it's not real. In fact, today, I noticed a lot of people are noticing this thing that we call predictive programming. And it's reached a critical mass to where to deny it exists is foolishness. The question now is, who has the correct explanation? But I like these big events, these big psyops, because it gives us an opportunity to explain where we're coming from and how we arrive at our conclusions. So here's Mike Benz, and he says, it's utterly uncanny. And note the words. You'll hear uncanny. You'll hear eerie. Mike Benz says, we are living through the exact plot of Top Gun, Maverick, scene for scene. And the implications are more than a little bit concerning for the higher need to keep the MAGA coalition together. And the response that he got there was, could the people who run Hollywood and who run our foreign policy be related? Somebody should look into this. And it seems like the majority of the comments are leading people to the erroneous conclusion that this has to do with the influence of Israel over Hollywood or something. But what we're talking about here, what is being pointed out, is actually pervasive. It's systemic. And it's something which we comment on routinely. So when we see the stuff, we're not calling it uncanny. We're not calling it eerie. We're calling it standard operating procedure. It's predictable at this point. I did an analysis of Top Gun Maverick, which is totally encoded for sun worship. The numbers, the symbols, the names, the iconography, it's all there. The Jesus Christ of Scientology, Tom Cruise, is used to convey the same archetype in practically all of his movies. I did a mind map on his character, his persona through the years, because I found it interesting that he's working on Eyes Wide Shut. And Eyes Wide Shut, of course, is a Kubrick. So we're talking about the space fakery mixing in. It's in the background here. And interestingly, Stanley Kubrick's daughter is a Scientologist. And Scientology is a space religion, and you can mock it, you can call it a cult if you want, but the fact of it is, it's a space religion that seems to have been designed to align with the new paradigm. I often refer to the religion the masses are a part of as NASAtology. And it's this religious framework in which the idea of heaven has been replaced by something tangible and achievable, which is space, outer space. But again, Tom Cruise's movies often have the code, the sun worship stuff. He's like this Gnostic Christ figure. Just for example, the movie Vanilla Sky, which had foreshadowing for 2020 lockdowns, which had the 9/11 like imagery of the jumper, but basically in that movie he's 33. He dies, comes back to life after 3 days. The whole thing is consistent with him. And the new Top Gun, it was produced 33 years after the first. The story takes place 33 years later. One of the characters is 33, and it's just ridiculous when you get into it. I did a whole breakdown on it. So we're very familiar with the occult subtext of the movie, which again ties into sun worship and this recurring theme of second coming. But now, again, just to get back on track here, the plot of Top Gun, here's another quote. If you saw the latest Top Gun movie, the mission is eerily enough just like... Now, this is also hitting mainstream. I think this is Fox News talking about it. Fox has shifted to explaining to audiences how bombing Iran will be easy, fun, entertaining. The weekend host said the bombing the underground site will be just like the latest Top Gun movie. So they're talking about the B-2 stealth bombs being dropped and how it's eerily similar. That's pretty much the typical code. If they say eerily, it's a way of distancing themselves from the deeper implications. And the default position when people see these parallels between real life and movies is to just chalk it up to either coincidence, which means it doesn't mean anything, which you could only arrive at that if you didn't study it every day, as we do. But if you see one of these stories every couple of months, it's not a big deal to you. But the other explanation is to attribute it to a higher power or a lower power. It's like the devil controls the media or the simulation controls the media. And all of those miss the mark. And this has been for years. There's been these three different explanations: coincidence, higher powers, lower powers. And what we have arrived at here at the IPS is really, I think, the only thing that makes sense of it all. It's being done by man. The same people who produce the movies are, in fact, producing the propaganda in the news, the psyops. And the movies contain psyop reinforcement content. Here's Matt Gaetz. He says, I want to know who at Top Gun Maverick knew the future. Now, again, if you pay attention to this every day, you would know you can say that about every single Netflix show if it's number one. Anything that's trending on Amazon, yeah, if it's trending, it's there for a reason. So it's eerie, it's just like the movie, it's uncanny, and it's rather nuanced. I went back to look at some of the scenes that they're referring to. I didn't play the clip here. I will here in a bit. A couple of other things. Here's John Hassan says, if I just heard her correctly, Jennifer Griffith reported that the B-2s dropped their bombs through ventilation shafts at Nordau to reach deeper into the facility. Echoes of Top Gun 2. Echoes of Top Gun 2. Now here's a post by Copaesthetic. He said, Dean Ryan TV used the term predictive programming and remote viewing to try to explain this clip. He showed the Fox News clip mentioning Top Gun, but he used the term as if it were synchromystical. Yeah, that's pretty much the case. And they also, here's something else too that differentiates them from us, is that anybody who's popular on this, when they explain these things, their starting point is that the thing is real, that nukes are real, that the attack really happened. And so for them, it's like, whoa, the attack happened just like the movie. I'm like, no, the attack is a movie. The movie is a movie, but so is the attack. But one of them is contextualized as, quote, news. And it becomes a historic event. And every day of fake news becomes a day in our fake history. WikiLeaks tweeted this today. Hollywood scriptwriters who say they are Jewish have been planting mental seeds for war with Iran for years, including Top Gun Maverick, Homeland 24, and in the DreamWorks film on Julian Assange, The Fifth Estate. And there's a clip here of Julian Assange. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to take this phenomenon, this observed, predictable occurrence of media, entertainment media, aligning with the news media. They're trying to put this in the context of this particular group was using this as a propaganda method. Now, a couple of points on that. That's not inclusive of how pervasive this is. It's just that's their cherry-picked opinion. They're not drawing from enough data to make this claim. But the fact of it is, they're noticing. They're noticing that there is a correlation between movies and how it frames how people see things. And it's just important to note this because a lot of people who don't understand this concept of analyzing concurrent programming, the stuff that's happening in the entertainment world intersecting with the psyops, well, this matters for a few reasons. We're talking about how they create history day by day. But when people aren't studying it or recognizing how pervasive it is, their conclusions are very narrow. So here's an article, Who Runs Hollywood? Which, again, this is an old trope about who runs Hollywood. And the only people who draw this conclusion already have a model in mind. And in their model, everything's real, but it's being done by this particular group. But that's where we differ. The God construct of the atom bomb, the weapon of mass destruction, is perfectly doing what it's intended to do. They don't actually have to blow anything up in real life and threaten any of us on a personal level to achieve their ends. It's right out of Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. The threat of the thing is more terrifying than the thing. So this is tweeted by Defense Index. Breaking, experts warn that if Iran's nuclear facility is struck, it could trigger major nuclear disasters due to underground enrichment operations. The risk of fallout is real. So I'm bringing this out. I'm bringing this particular image up here because prior to June 11th, we were talking about that date and the significance, but not specifically that date as in everything has to happen on one day, because that's not how things work, but rather the building body of propaganda steering us into EMPs, fallout, nukes, and of course, worldwide chaos, mass riots, and generative AI facilitating further mass confusion. Everything that we saw forecast in the entertainment has come into fruition, including the character, the villainous Valentina in that Thunderbolts movie with the skunk stripe in her hair, manifesting in real life as Tulsi Gabbard, who came out warning us about Hiroshima. So we're seeing so many overlaps. This is just life is normal, history in the making, and it's not being made by coincidence or mere happenstance, but it's actually being steered intelligently. Now, we talked about the new flagpoles the other day, how Trump put 2 flagpoles up, and we're thinking, what does this mean? Well, it turns out that the flagpoles are, he said, nearly 100 feet. No, they're 88 feet. 2 flagpoles, 88 feet tall, on either side of the White House. So what is the significance of that? What's with the 88 thing? Well, we were talking about, because this is also Gemini. We're talking about putting them up during Gemini. He's a Gemini, Flag Day, his birthday, Gemini twins. So here we are looking at these twin flagpoles, each 88. Mercury associated with Gemini, 88-day orbit around the sun. There's some kind of consistent numbering here that often refers to, and I associate Mercury, or even the number 88 rather, with time, the number of constellations in the zodiac. There's something reoccurring here with Trump. 88 miles per hour in the DeLorean and 1.21 gigawatts of power or whatever to go into the future. So the time travel stuff all had 88 attached to it. The Twin Pines Mall in Back to the Future correlated with 9/11's Twin Towers in many examples we could point to. And Biff Tannen was modeled off of Trump, who is now Biff Tannen. He's in his Biff Tannen stage. So I thought there might be something to these twin flagpoles, which he said were about 100 feet. He's exaggerating. He exaggerated. They're 88 feet tall. But twin poles, 88 feet tall, got me thinking about all this twin stuff. We had the twin stabbing case, which might erupt again in some way because it turns out the video contradicts the self-defense narrative. Then we had Sinners, one of the top-performing horror films of all time, top-performing movie right now, about twins, and it has a death scene similar to what happened at the racetrack in real life. and had the same racial undertones, and the backdrop of that movie reinforced the psyops of the day. And then we had on Easter the Pope and Klaus Schwab, who's the Pope of the World Economic Forum, stepping down the same day. One of them just quit, the other died, but they're both 88. They look the same. One has a black costume, one has a white costume, and they're each heads of these respective organizations. One of them's, the Vatican, of course. Like, if you think about the head of the world, or the head of this organization, and the head of the World Economic Forum, which is kind of a secular version of the same thing. So I saw that as twins, and they're both 88. So anyway, make of it what you will. The Pope, Klaus Schwab, the twin stuff. Add on to it now, twin flagpoles. Okay, let's continue. Netanyahu spent 33 years warning us that an Iran nuke is imminent. I mean, look how long they kicked that down. It's like 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, they'll be ready to activate their bomb. Just 2 more weeks to flatten the curve. You see how they always push it in the future, and it's because they know that the collective attention span is about 2 weeks. Nobody remembers the drones that swarmed New Jersey. Nobody remembers the fires in California. Nobody remembers Epstein or Diddygate. These things just go into the background. And that's by design. They flood us with so much information that it becomes impossible to keep up with it all. Oh, here's another strange connection. The Tribute in Light, the installation at the site of the Twin Towers, consists of 88 searchlights. Again, I don't have a precise answer for what that means, but it's been a very consistent thing with the Trump movement. And I don't think it just relates to HH, which is, well, I mean, there's layers to it, obviously. Do you remember when Trump first came out, he used to always do the 666 hand signs? Whatever happened to that? All right, let's see who's rolled up here in the chat. I know it's late. I just wanted to do a late night catch up, so we're setting the tone for the rest of the week, which will be very productive. We'll be here quite a bit. Joined by Kenley Esteban, Ready or Not, Roxy, Ears Up, A. Garcia, Mizell, King Ravana, Lord Laney, Wake O. Soto, Ollie Goering, Greg R., Coyote Smoke and Mirror. He says, I've seen fake atom bomb testing films, so the question is, why fake the evidence if the thing is real? Right. Right, and here's another thing, too. It's an agreed-upon hoax, just like fake space. So the power elite all agree they want this tool to terrorize the masses into compliance. And I consider it to be a god. It's a war god, in as much as Gaia is a god. It's a construct. It's basically, I think, more or less replacing the ancient storm gods and flood gods that the priesthood could use to, basically threaten. And that's kind of what it comes down to. It's just the threat. Conscious Reality says, people keep talking about the world news. My response is 5 years ago, I didn't buy it. I don't now. And you're under no obligation to believe the news. You can say, I need more information. Let's do some discovery. Let's wait. If you have to believe it instantly as soon as they publish a headline, then you're no longer in control. Your mind is an open portal to propaganda, and you become reactive. I prefer to respond when I have more information at my own pace. And it might take me 10 years to decide if this stuff is 100% true or not. I don't think it will, but if it does, it's my prerogative. The idea of compulsively believing headlines is ludicrous in the age of deep fakery. You can't assume it to all be pre-vetted. Penguinati Auto Hoaxer, Marcel, also rolled in here. Thank you very much for bringing the wrenches, Marcel. So we have a number of new Blue Wrench Lodge members, including McDirtyWork. They're already here. Dan W. and Obadiah. And that basically means you'll have access to the Discord server. I'll make sure I post a link tonight. Conscious Reality says June is... Oh, yes. Oh no, the guide stones. You brought the guide stones. The guide stones fell on July 6th because it was George Bush's 76th birthday. So we made a big point to look into that event, and it reaffirmed quite a bit. The Georgia Guidestones blowing up on George Bush's birthday in Georgia on 7/6, 42 years after they were erected, and it seemingly connected this idea that the stones were somehow connected to the Skull and Bones Society, and it also reiterated a few other things as well. That was a very fascinating week on the world stage. We're talking about the first week of July 2022. That was the week of the shooter with the 42 on his temple, the tattoo. He shot up a 4th of July parade, and we're like 4/7. He's got the 4/7 on his head, July 4th or 4/7. And he had a poster of Lee Harvey Oswald on his wall, and he was a sniper. And when that event happened, I said, hey, wait, it looks like the assassin's on the world stage, that Trump's going to get shot exactly where the number 47 is, or that's where they'll aim, which they did. That was Robert Krimmel, one of 2 or 3 shooters who happened to resemble a main character from Stranger Things. Do you remember Audrey Hale, who shot up the Covenant Christian School? She was Elle out of Stranger Things, a spitting image. Brandon says, wag the dog. Oh, yes, absolutely. That wag the dog isn't something they do once in a while when they need to distract the public. No, that's how the media works every single day. That's the main purpose of media itself. They're writing history. I mean, yeah, there is some real news in there, sure, but the fake stuff steers the rest of it. Verk John's made it. I'm recognizing a number of your names here because a lot of you ordered PSYOP trading cards. If you check your inboxes, I have 30 orders to process. I've done about a third of them so far. They're all packaged. I'm just printing labels, so I think I did 10. And as I print them, you'll get tracking numbers. So all 30 will be dropped off at the post office in the morning, and the remaining 20 sets will then be available, some of them as sets, some as individual cards, and you'll be notified in the newsletter. So the PSYOP trading cards are in circulation officially. All right, let's continue here. Lord Laney says, some people speculate the sun above moves in a figure 8 pattern like the analemma, like the infinity sign or figure 8. Yes. Yeah, again, it's associated, not by my opinion, but how it's represented in movies. It's consistently associated with time travel, however you make that, whatever sense that makes to you. Because I'm not saying I believe in time travel, although I do believe in, well, I recognize that the fake news is essentially time control. And when they create a fake event, or even fake people, crisis actors, they give them backstories. It's like timeline jumping, because they are, in fact, jumping into our timeline. But our accepted timeline represents a very limited perspective. Roxy W says, today's my birthday. Happy birthday. What, just 622? So did that make you a... Are we still in Gemini, or are we in the next thing? But yes, happy birthday. Glad to have you here. This is the IPS evening deprogram. Eventually we'll have morning and evening. We'll do more open phone stuff as well. Conscious Reality says, why don't they talk about the guide zones? It's strange they never found out who did it. Yeah, isn't it strange that you have this monument up there for 42 years? Nobody really took credit for building it. And then it gets destroyed. And nobody's really like, that person should be famous, right? This person struck a blow against the New World Order. If it's a conspiracy theorist fighting against whatever the stones represented. But no, the person showed up on a bike, put a cherry bomb on top, and they kind of overstated how it was blown up, like they couldn't have repaired it. But one point about it, you had 4 pillars and a capstone. And from the top, it's like a skull and bones. And the part of the capstone that was blown up corresponded to what would be the right eye socket. So we had speculated this was referencing the foreshadowed Trump head wound, which was hinted at with this Lee Harvey Oswald obsessed shooter 2 days before. Because these events happen back to back. And if you know the lore on it, again, George Bush Skull and Bones Society, 76th birthday, it's on 7/6, but the Skull and Bones Society has George Bush Sr., who some believe had something to do with the Kennedy assassination and the Skull and Bones ritual killing the king. So when you talk about who is behind this strange ritualistic killing of Kennedy, well, you would point to these specific secret societies, and some had made the connection that it was a Skull and Bones hit or something along those lines, involved those same people, specifically George H.W. Bush. So it's interesting that the Guidestones had this explosion on it that would seemingly, and also, by the way, for years before the thing blew up, there were images floating around Google of the Guidestones on top because it looked like there was blood on it, on that same spot. But yes, to the commenter, it is kind of conspicuous that nobody cares enough to investigate it. Someone should find out. Green Smoke says, megalomaniacal men control societal trends along with a viable blend of useful idiots and insidious minions. Yeah, exactly. I agree. I concur. I mean, the question here that I actually have this as a serious question. Is this the best of all possible worlds? Like, is perpetual Psywar the best way to maintain as much peace as possible? Like, are we essentially underneath a benevolent dictatorship? Because all signs, from my perspective, if I'm right about any of this stuff, it's useless to talk about different governments competing for resources and stuff, because ultimately there would only be one. There's only one government. If all the government agree to play along with specific major hoaxes like the nuke, fake space, the pandemic model, and also the building growing consensus for censoring the internet because of mind viruses. These are all what you'd call universal threats. Climate change. So anything that's universal, that everyone agrees with, but it's a big lie, these universal points of agreement should tell you that no, there's no rogues out there. They're all on the same page. Etheric Bliss says, RC Christian has been ID'd. Yeah, which I thought meant, you talk about who built the Guidestones, the Rosicrucians, which isn't inconsistent with any of this stuff. These various secret society groups are pretty much blended together. It's very syncretic, the Rose Cross stuff. Okay, let's move on. We're going through okay, this is great. So I had been calling out Tucker Carlson for some time. He got a pass. Nobody seemed to be bothered by the fact that 1 week he's saying that his Pentagon buddies told him that aliens are demons. And then months later, he goes on to this program, this Christian documentary, and he describes how he was in bed with his wife and his 4 dogs, and he was attacked by a demon. And the demon left scars down his back, long scars. And I was always saying, hey, Tucker Carlson, show me your scars. Show me where the aliens scratched you. And I'm saying aliens because he said demons are aliens. So how can he say that the demons scratched him? So it was demons in his bed. But if demons are aliens, why wouldn't he say aliens? So I've been harping on this for some time. Well, now Laura Loomer calls him out for being crazy. And that says something. If Laura Loomer is calling into question your sanity, you're pretty far gone. But he made these claims, and it's his fault. You know, he put himself in this position. But she said, I do not want to hear anyone ever again cite Tucker Carlson as a voice of reason. This is a guy who claims he was attacked by a demon in his bed and left bloodied and clawed. He should take off his shirt and show us the scars. I think he's losing it. So that's again, she's mad because he's anti-war or something. The people who don't want Israel to blow up Iran are being branded woke right. There's a major schism on the right, which I'm actually kind of enjoying. I think it's funny. Okay, so again, Laura Loomer calling out Tucker Carlson on his demonic scratches or alien scratch. He's an alien attack survivor, I've been saying. But how does he have credibility after saying something like that? If I said a supernatural entity crawled into my bed and scarred me up, I would be showing you my scars the next day. But he's not held to the same standard. And ultimately, it says that he knows that he's selling a product to people that he considers to be idiots. Marcel says probably meant his wife. Well, something. Conscious reality, yeah, good point. Sounds like a lie. He told his wife why he had scratches on his back. Aliens did. What does that say about his wife? She's like, oh, okay. Demons did it. Good thing it was demons. I thought it could have been a woman. Like that kind of came across my mind as well. Like perhaps there's a better explanation. But they're sleeping with 4 big dogs. Like what about Occam's razor? The most likely explanation that doesn't involve inventing demons and aliens. So one thing that struck me was, well, possibly he had a dream that he was being attacked by aliens. He rolled over onto his dog, big dogs, 4 of them, and some of the dogs scratched him as he flung himself out of the bed. Like that would be believable, and that could leave scars. But I'm just glad to see that he's no longer getting a pass with the alien stuff, because we know, of course, it's just not true. I mean, and I think it's fair to call confabulators liars. I mean, I'm pretty sure Tucker Carlson mocked that one guy. What was his name? The one who he made it into Congress by lying about his background. I think his name was George something. And now here he is. I mean, this is as bad as that guy Brian Williams, who was roasted for his stories about Katrina. George Santos is the other confabulator. I'm pretty sure that Tucker Carlson has criticized George Santos for his elaborate stories. George Santos says that his grandparents died in the Holocaust, his parents died in 9/11, he died in Sandy Hook. Like, there's no psyop he wouldn't attach himself to. And he finally got called out, and I realized then, you can lie yourself to the top of this thing. Yeah, there's quite a bit. Unbelievable. Tucker Carlson defends George Santos in sarcastic attack on the press. Tucker Carlson defends George Santos. Interesting. I have to look into this. I didn't expect that. I expected that he would have called him out, but now that I'm looking at it, serial liar Tucker Carlson defends serial liar George Santos. Carlson's career this is from 2023. This is news to me. His career is built on lying without conscience. So, of course, he sees a kindred spirit in George Santos. I would not have put these two together. Fascinating. Okay, he was downplaying it. Obviously, that's what he was doing. But anyway, let's move on. Penguinotti says, Loomer word for word stole your insistence that he shows you his scars. She's listening to IPR. She could be listening. I mean, or at least having her assistance. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to give people ideas. But if I were spying on somebody producing a multi-hour podcast every couple of nights or every night, I would use Notebook LM and I would get a synopsis, a breakdown, and quotes. That's how I would do it. And I see people doing it. I've fallen for this. There are major, like big accounts on Twitter, on YouTube, in various genres where you think somebody's basically reading you a podcast or doing a podcast, or it's an audiobook, but it's not even that person and it's not even their content. Like, it's just insane. For example, I listened to a series of podcasts that I thought were Jordan Peterson, but no, it's just some AI generated stuff distilled from a lot of content creators. And they put Jordan Peterson on the thumbnail to get clicks. So there's a lot of content theft going on these days. And I think that this is also true within media. I mean, Laura Loomer doing this wouldn't shock me, but we've often seen this, especially in the conspiracy realm, where people will farm small channels for content and then they get all the clicks. Clickbait trutherism. And it's all about clicks and engagement. I've been watching these back and forth, these fights. So Laura Loomer's fighting Candace Owens and Owen Schroyer. And Owen Schroyer is attacking various people, criticizing him of being woke right. But anytime he gets criticized, he, quote, ratios them. Like, and he mocks their lack of engagement. I've had people mock me for not having enough engagement. It's like, I don't even know how to respond to that. Like, that doesn't matter to me. I don't exist in the world where engagement matters more than truth or the ability to source your points. But as far as Loomer goes, I do have a prediction, and she blocked my DMs, by the way. I fed her. She's supposedly a big whistleblower. She likes to expose stuff, but I gave her a steady trail of clues over the last 3 or 4 years through her DMs about Marcus Goldfinch and QAnon in the White House and how the Q movement was a psyop run by some small cadre of people in Trump's shadow who travel with Trump, who are part of the White House press corps. I told her all this information, and she blocked me after I said, hey, by the way, did you know that in Netflix The Madness, Laura Jennings is clearly based on you? And she dies after she exposes election fraud. So she blocked me because I have a spoiler. The Laura Jennings character dies after exposing election fraud, just like the way that Laura Loomer claims that Twitter is a crime scene that should put Jack Dorsey in jail for election fraud. So there's a lot of this stuff happening with her. She's talked about the death threat she gets for her, I guess, disruptions with the NSA. This has been an ongoing thing with her. But somebody pointed out a different movie. I'll see if I can find it here. There's another movie where there's a character who's very similar to Laura Loomer who dies. So there's some kind of a trope here. The conspiracy theorist, journalist who finds out too much information. Well, that's kind of her exit strategy from the world stage. Or maybe not her strategy, it's her scripted role. So I don't care to make time-specific predictions, but if we use the movie that we're presently living through, the series, The Madness, as an indicator of what's to come, eventually Laura Loomer goes too far. She makes too many enemies. She's too close to the president. By the way, the New York Times called him a mad king yesterday. Who's the mad king now? Saying that he's way worse than King George. That he's a mad king. Again, the king's protest we just covered last week. This characterization of him is interesting. He's in his Biff Tannen phase, and I'm expecting him to become the Red Hulk. If you followed the parallels where the Trump characters in the movies are shot at and survive their assassination attempt, etc., there's a number of them that were released concurrent with the Trump shooting, and one of them was Captain America, and Harrison Ford as president, who gets shot at while he's at the podium. Well, anyway, he becomes the Red Hulk. And so think about the significance of connecting the Red Hulk, failed assassination attempt at the podium, 7/13, which is Harrison Ford's birthday, the date it happened, the date the trailer comes out. Well, it came out 7/12. But the Red Hulk, and then when they brought Trump back to the RNC, who came to speak about it? Hulk Hogan. So there's this Hulk stuff. And then we see Mickey 17, where the character who played the Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, plays a Trump character who gets shot at, bullet grazes his cheek. He talks about colonizing a white planet, same xenophobic stuff Trump does. And after he's shot, he poses for the cameras with the blood on his cheeks, on his cheek, just like Trump did. Again, Mark Ruffalo. And then Mark Ruffalo shows up at the No Kings protests. So again, another connection here. By the way, his birthday is 11/22, which is JFK's death day. But another connection here is that these Trump proxies, these characters in the movies who represent Trump, are often activists on the world stage. For another example, Alec Baldwin, very Trump deranged, and he played Trump on SNL for years. Or the other one, I guess, would be Robert De Niro, who played the character Senator McLaughlin in Machete, who gets shot at while giving a xenophobic speech, very Trump-like. But he again has foreshadowed this Trump in his present state in his various films, and he was also very much suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, which isn't real. They're propagandists. Conscious Reality says, did Candace Owens ever prove the president of France's wife is originally a man and his father? I think the only thing she proved is that there was a major age disparity and a lot of things that are questionable. You're talking about like an adult and then a teenager. It's like, what the hell is going on here? So that whole story is a mess. But Candace Owens' take on it seems infused with some other elements that are unfalsifiable. You can't really prove them either way. So I don't know how far it goes. But there is certainly some strangeness there. And then when we're talking about the president of France, then his wife slaps him in the face. That's bizarre. But I don't really believe in this elite gender inversion scenario because it promotes an unfalsifiable model. And that's what you have to bring into every one of these conspiracy theories. What information would prove it false? What information, like what kind of contradiction to your assertion would cause you to drop it? And you'll find that a lot of conspiracy theorists don't have that. There's no falsifiability. It cannot be proven wrong. And any evidence you give, they'll tap dance around it. You gotta kind of pin them down. Like I'm pinning down chemtrail people on the word spray. They'll say, what are they spraying? Or NOAA admits they're spraying the skies with chemicals. Well, no. NOAA admits that persistent contrails may have some effects when it comes to holding in heat. It's all speculation. But, I mean, as far as the long-term effects on it. But, no, they did admit that contrails have an effect. But they did not say we're spraying the skies. And the point of it is the formation of condensation trails is the result of hot exhaust interacting with high altitude rarefied air. And the process of condensation is relatively easy to explain. But to explain it in the context of a spray adds another element. So a spray would imply a substance in the plane that is squirting out. So they're not even saying an additive to the fuel. And NOAA did not say we're spraying the skies. They said condensation trails do this. So they're using the word spray to efface the actual process by which condensation trails form. There is no spray. So that word spray in this context it's a loaded word. The question is a loaded question. It's fallacious from the get-go. But I've noticed that this is how they sell it. The selling point for getting people to believe in geoengineering and chemtrails is to get them to use the word spraying. It's clever. It really is. But it's wrong. Conscious Reality says, I do believe that some U.S. presidents' wives were men, but it's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I remember thinking as a child that Barbara Bush was George W.'s mother. Interesting. Yeah, that's valid points. I mean, you have to play fair, though. You had the people ripping on Obama and Michelle, but they wouldn't say the same thing about Melania, although some will. Like, I know some people who will insist that Donald Trump is a woman. And I'm like, okay, fine. Let me just steel man your argument, because I believe in steel manning. People will straw man my takes, and it's like, sorry, but that's not good enough. Take the best argument from the other side and take that apart. No need to misrepresent it. So I'm going to steel man their claim. And so let's go with it. Donald Trump's a woman. Fine. Explain to me how he gave birth to Barron Trump at 62. That's how old he was when Barron was born, right? Or 60 years old. So explain to me how the 60-year-old woman gave birth to Barron Trump. And when did it? I mean, and when I bring this up, they say, oh, they use a surrogate. Okay, so now you just had to insert something into your story to make it make sense. instead of it being falsified. And that's just one example. I could point to numerous examples. They'll say, and I'm not going to go through this again, but anybody still promoting that is just not serious. William Morgan says, they're listening. I think the Salty Cracker podcast talk about similar things to the show, almost with eerie coincidences, but in a controlled op red pill way. They try to yeah. This is the thing. They are designed to, I think their positions, we're talking about propaganda vectors. Their purpose is to take up all the air. So if anybody's noticing coincidences in news with movies, let's fill it, let's dominate the conversation. And their conversation is going to lead to, hey guys, we live in a video game. Or, hey guys, the dark occultists behind the scenes need to tell us what they're going to do to gain our consent. So they have these ridiculous explanations that assert either A, a higher power, simulation, or B, lower power, dark occult forces doing rituals. But neither of these explanations address the fakery. They both assume this stuff is real. So the bad guys are wickedly gloating about it in advance. Well, no, are they really bad guys if these things aren't real? No. And then when it comes to the video game simulation garbage, why would the simulation need to hype up or promote news propaganda events? Why would the simulation decide, okay, the government's going to run a psyop and fake this mass shooting to sway public opinions? So the simulation is thinking here, let me insert this idea into the movies to further reinforce the propaganda so the power elite can continue to fake news and achieve total worldview domination. Like, I'm sorry, but you're going to try to convince me that the universe has a bias in favor of government propaganda every time? No, it doesn't make sense. But people like Salty Cracker may have bigger channels, bigger followings, and they're talented presenters. You might find them funny and stuff. But the fact of it is, they're participating in a fictional universe. In his world, nukes are real. The threats are real. If you take that away, their entire platform has no real basis. And our perspective is off-world stage. So they don't have the enlightened interpretation of predictive programming, nor do they understand it, or how systemic it is. And again, Salty Cracker podcaster exists in a world where all the fake stuff that we point out is real. I don't envy it. MM says, did you ever get followed? Define followed. As in stalked and gang stalked? Yes, I'm pretty sure of it. But, I mean, I think we all are. I'm truly not worried about it. People are like, oh, they're taking all your data, using AI, they're taking your soul. It's like, I don't think so. They're going to deep fake us until nobody can tell real from fake. I'm sorry, but they deep faked your great-grandparents and grandparents with rear screen projection. I mean, look at Apollo 11. Your grandparents, great-grandparents, your parents, they were all deep faked with very terrible special effects. And it put them into the alternate reality into which you were born. So we're all still deep fake. It's just, supposedly it's getting better. I mean, I don't know. I think there's still a wide disparity between the government psyops and what we see on Netflix. But they're catching up. And I'm still wondering how they're going to do outer space movies. Like when Tom Cruise goes to the space station to film a movie, what's going to happen when his movie makes space look realer than what's on the space station? I think that's a contradiction. And I pointed this out when the movie ISS came out about the world getting nuked and Russia and America fighting for control of the space station. I noticed that their special effects were terrible. Like worse than NASA's. I'm like, they're obviously fake floating. So they dumbed it down, in my opinion, in order to maintain the illusion. There's a competition here. You know, they can't make NASA look... It would be discrediting if we were able to do comparisons. And leading up to the release of that movie, I said, watch the hair. The hair in this movie will either give away the space station as fake or at least give us some points of comparison so we can show they're using the same special effects. And so I was watching the ISS movie thinking their hair would be, sticking straight up like it does in the NASA clips they show us. But no, you know what they did in the movie ISS? All the women had tight ponytails, not one loose hair in the movie. And I think that was due to my criticism, my threats of bringing about wide criticism of the space station by bouncing it off the movie. Conscious reality, good point. All U.S. presidents have connections to Hollywood. Ronald Reagan, actor, wasn't. Yeah, that's a great point. There's a couple of points in this. I mean, think about Trump. I mean, are we seriously just living in maybe The Apprentice season 47? Maybe The Apprentice never ended. Maybe that man's entire life has been a reality TV show. Same with Elon Musk. So when you're talking about reality TV show, you're talking about it's real, but it's also scripted. And in a way, it's almost parody. But for the most part, when you're looking at a psychological operation, you're talking about, let's say, a fake shooting or a fake terror attack. How is that different from reality TV? Maybe it's reality TV with special effects, but it's essentially the same thing. They're simulating something, they're acting, but the difference is context. And my main contention here is that the fake news events, which are driven by actors, a lot of them are literal actors, some of them are politicians, but if they're reading a script, if they're participating in a psyop, they're actors. And these fake staged events become chapters in our history. So it makes sense that they would recruit actors for this stuff. It is an actor-driven reality. That's Dallas Goldbug is the person who coined that phrase. And it's a valid point. It's not as random as people would think. Like, it's kind of ironic that the biggest and most provable conspiracy of all eludes all the conspiracy theorists. The conspiracy theorists have lists of things they believe in or might be true. They sift through this stuff all day long. They have all these conspiracy theories, but they don't see the biggest one of all staring us in the face, which is the fact that our history is being fabricated day by day. And it's hard to see this one without having the long view. You have to really consider the implications of how every story that we've observed on the news, going back as long as you've been paying attention, every one of these is going into the history books as presented by the mainstream sources. That's reality curation. Doesn't matter what we discover to be fake or questionable or hoaxed. All the God constructs are treated as real. And so our history is obviously bent. And they do the same thing with AI. All of the AI operates within the mainstream mediation box. It's not intrinsically or inherently skeptical of the news claims. It's skeptical of the conspiracy theories, but AI is programmed to reinforce the dominant paradigm. And the dominant consensus worldview we have is provably bent by a bunch of fake events, liars, and actors on the world stage. Conscious Reality says, Trump's name has been indoctrinated into our everyday life since we were kids. Who remembers him doing a cameo in Home Alone 2? See, that's another great point here, is that why is this particular businessman a celebrity? Like, what made him so important that before he ever became a household name with The Apprentice, he was always there? He was on Oprah 33 years old or something. She said, you should be president. But he was encoded into our world. Biff Tannen is one of the best examples of this. And the writers say that, yeah, this was based off of Donald Trump. And there are many examples, actually, if you go through it. Trump as King Koopa demolishing the Twin Towers in the Super Mario Brothers movie. But it's pervasive. And a lot of times it's not overt. Well, they don't say this is obviously Trump. For example, when I watched Machete, and you see this bad xenophobic senator getting shot at while he's at the podium talking about immigrants, I didn't think Trump. That wouldn't have crossed my mind. And that movie came out in 2010, before Trump got into politics. Yet, on 7/13/2024, 30 minutes after the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting, there are comments on that YouTube clip from the movie Machete where people are saying, oh, this is Trump's point of view 30 minutes ago. And I thought that's interesting, just to consider how 15 or 14 years after a terrible movie, people associate it with a real-time event. Like the recall is so good in just the movie watchers watching even terrible movies that they make these associations, which reinforces my premise that entertainment is used to provide reinforcement content for the psychological operations. So people interpret it in predictable ways. Conscious Reality says, I live nowhere near New York City, but I've heard Trump's name all my life. It's weird if you think about it. Yeah, he was force meat. Yeah, he's rapped about. So he's a character who was put... Devil's Advocate. Devil's Advocate, Al Pacino, Keanu Reeves. Well, the Devil's Penthouse is Trump's. So now Trump is a very meta-scripted character. Look at 1958 Trackdown, but it goes way back. And a lot of the foreshadowing, a lot of the representations of Trump came out before he entered the form he's in right now, before he got into this particular role. And this is a common theme with a lot of people on the world stage. But the interesting thing again about Trump is his future position as this Biff Tannen-like character, as a politician, was foreshadowed by various characters who sometimes openly, sometimes not, represented him. I mean, Mickey 17 is obviously Trump. It talks like Trump. It's got his cadence. He does a little dance. It's 100% Trump, but they're denying it. They're just flat out lying. But why? Well, because the movie was filmed 2 years before Butler, Pennsylvania, and it pretty much mirrored it perfectly. You know, Seeker Morpheus had brought this up too. He said, if these directors weren't part of this stuff, then why aren't they taking credit for how prophetic they are? That's a very good point. Because I can point to numerous examples where the directors could take credit for having nailed something, but they never do. Lean Dion says, the interview when he's 33 considering buying the towers. Oh, yes. And after the towers went down, he was part of some project where they wanted to build it back up as the World Trade Center Phoenix. Has a lot of significance, the whole the Twin Towers with Trump. There's a lot of associations with him and the towers in the body of predictive programming, which exists. Some people denied the very existence of what we call predictive programming, and that's just denialism or situational unawareness. It's kind of unforgivable at this point. And everybody in the Trutherville talks about it, but they've been given false explanations this entire time. I was just watching an episode of Black Mirror today in which this character is invited to a funeral and they need to access his memories because they're building an immersive memorial. So he's looking at these old pictures and he goes into the picture and he has a full sensory recollection and he interacts with it. But anyway, I saw this tweet today and it is Roman Helmet Guy. He says, cognitive security rule number 1, do not do this. And what is it? This individual named Alex tweets, I wasn't ready for how this would feel. We didn't have a camcorder, so there's no videos of me with my mom. I dropped my favorite photos of us into Midjourney and turned it into a video, and here's how she hugged me. I've rewatched it 50 times. So this guy's watching a video of his mother hugging him. Well, he never had a video of it. And what cognitive security rule number 1 is about here is the danger of creating false memories or influencing your memories. Because this is how the Mandela effect works. It's called the misinformation effect, where every time you recall something, it's influenced by the context of the recall. And so now you're taking your old memories, recalling them with an artificial memory. And the artificial memory is essentially put in the same place as the real memory. It becomes indistinguishable from the purposes of recall. And this is why Mandela affected people are convinced their memories are real. It's because, yeah, your memory is real, but it didn't come from a real event. Your memory was constructed in the context of the question when somebody queried you about these two objects. Well, in this case, yeah, that is kind of an interesting concept here. Cognitive security rule number 1. But anyway, right out of Black Mirror, Vox says, people aren't ready for the level of digital necromancy AI is going to unleash. This will screw with people's heads when you can recreate someone's voice and personality using AI. This isn't healthy. Costco says, they act like Black Mirror is a list of really great suggestions. And that's funny too, because I'm watching Black Mirror and I saw this tweet and I realized, hey, this is exactly what I just saw. But anyway, we're hearing this alarmism all the time. Like, things are getting so bad. We're all going to be deepfaked. And it's like, yeah, the good news is, again, you were born into a deepfaked world, and the special effects were way worse than they are today. Penguinati Auto Hoaxer says that new World Trade Center keeps the top third of the lights off.